Family brunch was supposed to mean warmth, laughter, belonging. At least, that's what people say. The restaurant smelled of roasted bread and expensive coffee, the kind served in thick white cups that made everything feel important. My family sat around the long table dressed in their best smiles. I took my usual seat at the corner, close enough to be present, far enough to be ignored. No one asked how I was doing. They never did. My mother stood near the head of the table, commanding attention without effort. She had always been like that, elegant, sharp, admired, the kind of woman people praised for being honest when she was actually cruel. I tried to focus on my plate, telling myself to survive another hour, just another performance, just another reminder of where I stood. Then she looked at me, not the polite glance you give a stranger, a deliberate stare. Her lips curved into a smile that felt wrong. "Everyone watch this," she said, lifting her coffee cup. For a second, I thought she was joking. A bad joke, maybe. My chest tightened, but my mind refused to believe what my eyes were seeing. The coffee poured down. Hot liquid soaked through my shirt, splashing onto my hands, burning my skin. The pain was sharp, sudden, but it was nothing compared to the sound that followed. Laughter, not loud, not cruel enough to be obvious, just enough to let me know they approved. My mother tilted her head, examining the stains spreading across my clothes like she was inspecting dirt on the floor. "That's how we treat trash at this table," she said calmly. The word trash echoed louder than the clinking forks. I looked around. My father stared at his plate. My aunt avoided my eyes. My cousin lifted his phone, pretending it wasn't recording. No one stood up, no one said my name. My hands trembled, not from the heat, but from the realization that this wasn't an accident. This wasn't anger. This was entertainment. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to scream, but what came instead was silence. I slowly stood, coffee dripping onto the floor, my shirt ruined, my dignity worse. I didn't defend myself. I didn't ask why, I already knew. As I walked out, the door closing behind me, one thought followed me into the quiet street outside. This wasn't just humiliation. This was the moment I stopped being their child and started becoming something they would one day regret creating. The burn on my skin faded within days. The burn inside me stayed. I didn't go home after that brunch. There was no home left to return to, only a room I rented by the month, with peeling paint and a window that faced a brick wall. That night I stood under cold water watching coffee. Colored memories swirl down the drain. I scrubbed until my hands hurt, as if I could erase the moment by force. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice again. "That's how we treat trash. Morning came anyway." It always does, even when you wish it wouldn't. I stopped answering calls. Not that many came. The silence from my family was loud, almost proud. They believed I would crawl back, apologize for existing, beg for forgiveness I never needed. But something inside me had shifted. I learned how heavy loneliness really was. Not the dramatic kind, no tears, no shouting. Just long evenings with no one asking if I ate. Birthdays passing unnoticed. Achievements celebrated only by the echo of my own breath. At first, the anger kept me alive. Then exhaustion replaced it. One night, I caught my reflection in the dark glass of the window. Tired eyes, slumped shoulders, a person shaped by rejection. I whispered, "Is this all I am?" The answer didn't come from outside. It came quietly, painfully, from within. "No, but you will have to build yourself without them." So I did. I worked when the city slept. I studied until words blurred. I took jobs no one wanted, learned skills no one noticed, carried dreams no one believed in. I failed more times than I could count, but failure felt different now. It didn't come with laughter. It came with lessons. Slowly my back straightened. My voice steadied. I stopped explaining my past to people who didn't earn the truth. I stopped craving approval from hands that once pushed me down. I learned something important during those years of quiet survival. Being alone wasn't punishment. It was preparation. I wasn't becoming hard. I wasn't becoming cold. I was becoming unbreakable. And somewhere between the late nights and early mornings, I made a promise to myself, one I would never break. If I ever return, it will not be to beg for a seat at their table. It will be to show Then I built my own. Success didn't arrive with noise. It came quietly, like sunrise, slow, inevitable, unnoticed by those still asleep. By the time my name began to matter, I had already stopped needing it to. I dressed differently now, not to impress, but because my shoulders finally carried confidence instead of shame. I spoke less, listened more. Power, I learned, didn't need to announce itself. I built something of my own. Not overnight, not without scars, but brick by brick, mistake by mistake. I created a life that no longer needed permission. People started calling me for advice, then for partnerships, then for solutions they couldn't find elsewhere. No one knew my story that was intentional. One afternoon, an unfamiliar number lit up my phone. I almost ignored it. Almost hello, I said. There was a pause. Then a voice I recognized immediately, older, careful, unsure. My father. He spoke as if nothing had happened, as if years of silence could be folded into politeness. He asked how I was doing. He said my mother asked about me. He mentioned family brunch, like it was tradition, not trauma. I felt nothing, and that scared me more than anger ever had. I'm busy, I said calmly. Before he hung up, he added, we could really use your help. That was when I understood. They didn't miss me. They missed my value. Days later, the invitation arrived. Same restaurant, same table. Same people who once watched coffee spill over my chest without standing up. I didn't rush to respond. I sat with the decision, feeling its weight. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about closure, mine, not theirs. When I finally accepted, I did so without fear. Walking into that restaurant again felt surreal. The room hadn't changed. The people had aged. I was the only unfamiliar thing there. They stood when they saw me. My mother's eyes widened. She smiled, but it trembled. For the first time, she looked at me like I mattered, not as trash, not as entertainment, but as someone she couldn't control. We exchanged greetings like strangers, as I took my seat, not at the edge, but near the center. I realized something powerful. I didn't come back to prove them wrong. I came back because I no longer needed their approval to be right. And that was the moment I knew the real revenge hadn't even begun. The table was set. White cloth, polished cutlery, the same expensive coffee that had once humiliated me. The irony wasn't lost. I smiled, not loudly, not cruelly, just a calm, unshakable smile. My family watched me sit. Their expressions flickered, surprise, curiosity, hesitation. My mother's hand hovered over her cup. She didn't know I had changed, not the way they imagined, not the way she feared. For a moment, I let silence stretch, the kind of silence that fills a room heavier than words. Everyone felt it. Then my mother, tentatively, said, "So what have you been up to?" Her voice carried polite curiosity, but I could see the underlying tension. "I build things people depend on," I said quietly, meeting her gaze steadily. "Companies, futures, solutions." Her eyes narrowed slightly, trying to measure me. "That's nice," she said, her tone lacking conviction. I nodded and sipped my coffee, slowly, deliberately. No rush, they were watching, waiting for anger, for drama, for a fight. But none came. I placed a file on the table. The leather-bound folder was elegant, professional, and entirely mine. I slid it toward her, her eyes widened. My father's jaw tightened. Cousins and aunts leaned forward instinctively. I spoke softly, letting every word carry weight. "These are contracts, business accounts, partnerships, loans, all of which, as of today, are under my control." No shouting. "No accusations, just truth. I've forgiven you." I said louder now, so everyone could hear. "Not because you deserve it, but because I am stronger than the hands that once tried to destroy me." My mother's hand trembled. My father swallowed hard. They had built their lives believing I would never rise above their cruelty. And yet here I was, untouchable, calm, complete. I gathered my things, still smiling. "Watch this," I said quietly, placing my coffee cup back on the table, untouched. The words weren't a threat. They were a declaration. I stood and walked out, my back straight, my head held high. Every step echoed years of pain, patience, and perseverance. Behind me, no one dared speak. No one dared follow. For the first time, I truly felt free. Revenge had never been about humiliation. It had never been about tears or anger. It was about becoming untouchable, about showing the world, and yourself, that no one's judgment, cruelty, or betrayal can define your worth. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I realized the sweetest revenge isn't bitter. It's quiet, it's calm. It's absolute, and for the first time in my life, I smiled not for them, but for me.